Hey gals and guys, I'm Vicky, or Hayes, of this YouTube channel, and I'm here with a slightly different sort of video where I'll be running you through a tutorial about turning a raw polyurethane cast mask into a wearable costume object, or technical cosplay, or just high quality stuff. This is straight out of the mold, or sort of one you've made or bought, but the example I'll be using is this Reaper mask from Blizzard's new game Overwatch. Now this is in fact my silicone mold that you can see that this cast has come out of. Here's one I painted earlier. This is actually one that showed up in these photos that I'm going to show you here. I actually decked my boyfriend out on it, and then we went down some of the local ruins because I live in a medieval walled city. Now you see I've laid out my work area. I have my Dremel, my rotary tool tips for cutting and slicing. I have my PPE, my personal protective equipment. You definitely want eye protection at the very least, and a dust mask at the most. Wearing a full bodysuit that you're not worried about getting, wearing clothing that you're not worried about getting covered in dust is also very useful. I've set up this entire area. You can see I've got a tarpaulin down. I'm in an area I don't mind getting dusty because I've sealed off the rest of the house, so I can just come and clean this place up later. But this is a rotocast polyurethane resin from this silicone mold, and what you want to do at first is to inspect the object and see what you have. You want to see where the flash is, see what needs cutting off, and plan your way around it with your tool. You can see there's lots of drips, there's lots of things that need cutting off, and lots of the eye holes and the other gaps need to be cut. So plan ahead, make sure you're aware of what you're doing and where you're going on this object. Now, you can see the big flash edges. I've not found any great. I use a standard rotary cutting tool. They're just little cutting discs. They are fairly disposed. You may be able to find a better power tool for the job, but this is what I have, and this is what has worked for me. We'll be using the rotary tool for many other tasks as we go through. You may also want to wear gloves to protect your hands and fingers in case you slip. However, I've never broken the skin with this tool. The only thing that's particularly worrying is when the actual tool itself breaks and you get a flying shards going everywhere. So my first line is cutting around the edges and taking out all that flash, which makes the object much easier to work with. Because you don't have all of these sharp edges, or they're not that sharp, but or you don't have all of these awkward edges around it, and you get a much better idea of the tool. Make sure you're happy with the speed of the tool. If it's going too fast, it'll melt the plastic, so cutting becomes impossible because it will mold up. So cutting becomes impossible as it'll just mold up behind your cutting tool. If it's going too slow, it won't cut at all, or it'll take too slow. You'll get a lot more dust. You've got to be careful. This will actually create a lot of noise as well, so be considerate to the rest of the people in whatever building you're in. Take your time to experiment with some of the flash bits at the edges so you can get a feel for the tool. If the mold has been well made, there'll be a very defined edge for you to cut along with definite edges coming as an easy line for you to follow with the tool. This is not a process you should rush. With all the stuff from the outside done, you can deal with the drips and things from the inside of the mask with the same tool. Hopefully the eyes will have a defined edge that you can cut from the inside as well. Like the edges you find, like the edges of the mask, you find the spot you want to cut along with these. Cut along and follow it around. With these eyes, you can be a lot more judicious with cutting them than you think. You need to cut quite close to the face to get a comfortable mask, and the eyes will still look pretty deep from the outside. The same goes for the mouth details. You don't have to be too You don't have to be too detailed about it, as you will be cleaning up the edges with a grinding tool in a little while. You can see just how deep I've gone with these, and how it still looks quite, and there still looks like there's a lot of depth and thickness to the mask, even though it's a thin layer of polyurethane. You can expect the cutting disc to break whilst you're doing this. I think I got through 3 in this cutting, and that is the best reason to use eye protection. Though it won't break the skin, it's certainly scary. We move on to the... Yep. Changing the cutting head is nice and easy. Don't worry about breaking them. They're cheap. You can get solid metal ones. I don't happen to own one, but perhaps it's something I should invest in, or I should maybe invest in a better tool for this. If you have a suggestion, or maybe I should invest in a better tool for this. If you have a suggestion, please tell me what I'm missing. Right, here you can see just how much stuff we've actually removed from the mould. There'll always be a lot of flash from a rotocast mould like this, which has an open face. Now we move on to the grinding and sanding tools. And we're just going to go around all the edges, taking our time to make them all nice and uniform, and remove any mistakes we made with the cutting tool. Any extra like cuts where it went off to one edge, or put a deep nick in something. We also can use this time to clear up a few of the flaws in the actual casting itself. No mould is ever going to be perfect. There will always be little knobbly bits, some imperfections where I have made a mistake, or whoever's sculpted it has made a mistake. Now you can use this time to use your sanding tool to go around the eyebrows, the nose, little bits where it might not have been even in the original sculpt, or the casting process hasn't been entirely kind to it. Again, like the cutting tool, just make sure you're happy with the speed of the tool. If it's grinding too hard, it'll melt. If it's not fast enough, it won't affect anything. Also, like with all sanding products, your sanding tool will wear down eventually, and you will need to replace it regularly. Otherwise, it'll lose its abrasive qualities, and you'll just have a smooth rotating thing that you're hitting your mask with. I actually, depending on the job at hand, I actually have and here we go. It's entirely cleaned up. You can see it. In a second, I'm going to take it away to wash it off, wash all the powder off, clean it up. Clean it up because there's a lot of powder, a lot of dust, and that all needs to be cleaned off and washed off, so it's a nice surface to start painting on. So, it's been washed, and now I have my painting set up. Make sure I've got everything that I want for the painting already. I've got my little mixing board, my little palette. I've got my brushes ready. I've got water ready to mix with any of the water, and I've got my choice of undercoat paints. I use and here's the sort of blank mask. I use my choice of paints for things like this is my choice of paints for this is stuff called System 3 by Della Rowney. I have cheated somewhat and gotten a colour that is the exact bone colour that works perfectly for this. It doesn't actually require any mixing, but this paint is absolutely fantastic for going over any surface. It's got a little bit of flex to it, so it won't get sort of scraped off too easily. It's got very high permanence, and it mixes very well because it's got a very high pigment. It's got a very high amount of pigment in it. So, one thing to always remember is to make... So I just squeeze out a little bit of the paint I want to use. I always mix in a bit of water. You want to keep your brush moist. You want to keep your brush moist and the paint you're working with an even thickness that you can keep with your. You can keep it sort of watered down a little with your water. So long as it is water-based paint, I would say you always want to mix in with a bit of water. That helps remove streaks. It does mean you need to put a couple of extra layers on, but that will give you a much more even coat in the end, especially for weaker colours like sort of yellow, white, and such, and for a big part of this bone colour. But the bonus of using really good quality paints is that it's just beyond their staying power is the fact that they have such a high pigment count in them that you're sort of doing less coats overall. For this mask, I actually did 3 quite thin coats of bone, quite thin coats of the bone colour over the base mask, and that left me happy that I had a nice consistent colour over the entire mask. Boop, boop. Boop, 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 boop. Now, black is a... Oh. How much of this painting did I fucking do? And as you can see, a nice even coat, thanks to patiently doing a number of nice coats. Now, black is a much stronger colour, and you can usually get away with you can usually get away with fewer coats. With this colour, I actually painted the black on the back parts, and because of that, it means it's much easier to paint. It'll go over any other colours, hence why I painted the black last, because any of the bone colour, or the titanium buff, or whatever it's called, that goes onto the parts that I want to be black, the black will just paint over that titanium colour without any issue. The beige colour will not go over the black very well. It'll take a couple of layers. I also painted behind where the black is to try and make the semi-transparent nature of the polyurethane a bit more opaque, so there's less chance of anything showing through. That just results in a bit of a higher quality prop. Now, with paint, I actually am totally happy to if I get any watery lines dripping through, I'm happy to clean it up with my tongue, just because your tongue is one of your actual your best controlled tools. Now, once all that's dry, you get to do the cool stuff. This is my airbrush. This is just a £45 airbrush head. It's an AB 180. It's a generic thing, and through it I put this acrylic ink, another Della Rowney product because I just adore them. But it's attached to a 60 quid compressor. tiny little portable compressor, and it's the best thing I ever bought for doing costumes. For doing any costumes, props, prosthetics, airbrushing it just makes such a difference. So the airbrush I'm going to use to put shading and highlighting onto this. Well, actually, no, it's just going to be the shading, because the highlighting is going to be done with dry brushing, because it's bone, and that actually gives a nice effect. So I pick out the areas I want to shade, which are underneath most of the edges. And you can see I'm actually doing short, quick bursts to slowly build up colour, like you would with the brush and the water. The colour looks a little weird on my camera, I'm afraid. It's more brown than it looks, and it sort of blends a bit nicer. But when you choose the angle that you're blowing at, you actually get some nice effects where you can see at the brow there's a lighter edge on the top of the brow, but it's caught just above that, and I can just darken up the entire thing, make it look less uniform. With the nose, I actually picked a side that I wanted to be shaded, and then blew across that with the airbrush. So it was obvious that there's a detail through it. Now I'm mixing in a bit of a lighter colour. Now again this acrylic ink is the exact right colour for what I want to be doing with it, and I managed so I don't need to mix it and be consistent. But it's nice and dark enough that I can use it to shade some of the areas that want to be actually filled in. All these crevices, all of these lines, these exaggerated sort of bits where the bones interlock with each other, I want to be shaded to highlight everything, because it's a very, I don't want to say cartoony, but because they're very exaggerated props, it brings out all of the details. So I'm going over it. This airbrush is a dual action airbrush, so you can control the amount of paint that comes out of it. So I can actually have the same amount of paint that the same amount of air that I would usually have, but with less paint. And then once I'm happy with that, I just go over it with a bit more, make it all a bit more of a uniform colour, so there aren't too many stark changes, and then wash out my airbrush. You should always wash your airbrush between uses, because if you leave it standing for any amount of time with ink in it, that's a good chance that will gunk up the needle. So I take that aside and wash it. Now, dry brushing. This bit is a bit that requires a little bit of technique, whereas airbrushing is fantastic. Anybody can do it. It makes any props look a bit better. But with the dry brushing, you want to make sure you mix your paint up quite nicely, so you get the colour you want. I'm using this white with a touch of the brown that I've been using for the shading, so I can colour it a little bit so it's not too stark. Then, with your brush without too much water on your brush, you don't want to actually keep your brush moist for this. You want to brush your brush. You can see me doing it on the palette now until there's very little actual paint on the brush, and then starting from the edge, so you don't immediately dump a whole load of paint on your project. You want to just slowly brush, just catching the tips, catching the top of your prop. So you're just picking out the details, picking out the highlights, the areas which would have more wear on them. Therefore, the base color would show through a bit or look a little bit cleaner. It can be quite hard on your wrist when you're doing a large area, because you're just trying to flick it back sort of back and forth, trying to catch highlights. Try not to dump too much paint in any one area. If you do dump too much paint in one area, you can go back over it with your shading, or you can just kind of lick it off like I might do, or try and blend it with a finger. But this is what counteracts a lot of what looks like overzealous shading. And then there are some areas like the cheeks and the brows that you want to make sure are especially shaded. And then you can go over just the big flat areas with a little bit of shading. with a little bit of dry brushing to actually bring out the texture of the object that you're painting. Excuse me. Now, once I'm happy that's all dried, I can go over. Once I'm happy that's all dried, I can go over the bits where I want the colour to be a bit more stark and a bit more solid. So I've got my little detail brushes now. So I take a little bit of the acrylic ink and I'm going to run it through all of the cracks just to make them look a little bit deeper, to add a bit more solid colour to them where the airbrush is a bit more vague. This just brings out all of the contrast, especially now that we've got the highlighting done and the rest of the shading on the mask done. So just follow these lines around, follow the deep bits, and it comes out quite nice, in my opinion. Just catching each one of these little scratches and little nicks, going around the edges, creating a bit of contrast. Yay! Whoa. Crap. No, come on. And there we have it. The base bone colour of the mask entirely done. Have to wait for that to dry before we can do any more on it. Oh, probably not actually, since we're going to work on other bits. Now we're actually going to move on to doing the blacks. You can see that the airbrush has caught some of the black on the rest of the object. If you're actually worried about that, you can actually masking tape it off so it doesn't get covered in. But because it's black, it's really not that much of an issue. For some of the other detailing, I'm just undercoating the rivets in black, just normal black acrylic paint, because they're going to have silver over them, but the silver will look brighter with the black underneath them and look a bit more consistent rather than using the white beige of the rest of the mask. And also, one of the interesting things about the rivets is you can actually let your brush follow its way around the edge of it because they're raised. It's nice and easy to let the brush do the work for you. And you can just, and if too much gets around the edge, you can just clean it off with a wet brush and kind of mop up the paint before it dries. So now I've gone over all of the black again to make sure it's nice and solid. I'm getting out my choice of silver paint. I'm actually, to get a nice dark metal effect, I'm going over it again. I'm going to go over it with dry brushing again, but with metallic paint, because I feel this gives a nice brushed metal look. Because if you notice, like brushed stainless steel or such actually has striations in it. It has a grain where it's been put together, and this also highlights the edges, so it gives it a nice mechanical look. And that's just the exact same dry brushing technique we used to do the highlighting on the bone. You can see it's getting a nice sort of shine there. And then you just do the exact same for the other side. And now, using this exact paint, I do the same thing I did for the scratches in the bone, and actually use a brighter, more solid colour to do the scratches in the metal, because you'll know sort of rusted metal or darker metal, if it becomes scratched, actually gets a lot brighter, and well, depending on the metal. And then using the exact same paint, go over the rivets in the top to make them a nice bright silver colour. And once I'm happy they're nice and neat, I can let them dry. And then we just let it dry. And once it's dried, the next and one of the most overlooked phases of making a prop like this, once you're happy with the paint job, is to seal it, to use an appropriate sealer for it. Here I have my two favourite ones. I have a matte sealer and a satin sealer. The satin sealer gives it a slightly less than gloss finish and makes an object look quite professional. A matte one stops any glare, makes the object look very solid and very... It's hard to describe. It removes shine from an object like you would get from having painted it and actually brings out the contrast, brings in the colours, make the colours look deeper and nicer. So just a quick varnish coat, a quick finishing sealant coat will also protect the object and just make it look so much more professional. And once you've done that, you are finished. Here's one I made earlier. From here, what you need to do is just attach a strap to the back of it. You can see I actually sell adjustable straps with mine. If you're making it for yourself, you can just make it specifically for yourself. I've got this semi-opaque netting, which you can just about see through when it's against your skin. And then this LD45, this just standard foam as padding on the inside, so you can wear the mask with comfort, and you can just adjust that yourself, cut little bits, so you can adjust it to fit. And then you wear it for a day of reaping. Yeah, it's all attached with hot glue, which actually reacts very well to polyurethane. Just be careful not to use too much of it, otherwise you will distort the polyurethane, because it will react. It will kind of bend to the heat. But yeah, if you enjoyed this tutorial, if you found it useful, if you found it confusing, please give me feedback. I'll happily answer any questions, happily give you any help with creating props and projects like this of your own. Thank you for joining me, and from me and Reaper, goodbye.